Welcome to this explainer. Today, we're putting on our textual forensic expert hats to deconstruct a seriously complex case of Talmudic logic. We're going to see how the precise, almost surgical use of a single isolated word in an ancient text can completely dismantle a dominant legal theory and ultimately dictate binding law. You know, in the world of halacha, details aren't just suggestions, right? They're the absolute building blocks of reality. When these sages debate, they're engaging in this rigorous logical deduction where every single syllable is weighed. Our job today? Track their evidence. Here is the roadmap for our investigation today. 1. The diverted knife case. 2. The harmonization theory. 3. A forensic textual anomaly. 4. The solitary witness. And 5. The final verdict. Let's kick things off with Section 1, the diverted knife case. So, before we jump into the abstract logic, we really need to set the physical parameters of the case. We are examining a specific anatomical anomaly in ritual slaughter known as Hagrama, or the diverted knife. Now, in halakha, the proper area for a kosher slaughter is strictly defined along the windpipe. It has to be precise. But what happens if the slaughtering blade strays slightly upward from those legally designated boundaries, slipping just above the large upper ring, the cricoid cartilage? Does a literal millimeter of deviation completely tank the entire process? Because the law demands absolute precision, our ancient jurists had to figure out if this slight diversion catastrophically breached the baseline requirements of the ritual. The whole foundation of our forensic investigation starts right here with this quote from an early authoritative Baraita, and it presents a massive legal contradiction. Look at the first part. The initial anonymous ruling is totally uncompromising. It says the slaughter is not valid. Period. The physical boundary was crossed, ritual disqualified. But then, Rabbi Chanina ben Antigonus steps in and testifies that the slaughter is valid. This is a head-on collision of legal opinions. We've got an absolute prohibition slamming right into an absolute validation. The scholars had a major discrepancy to resolve here. Moving on to Section 2, the harmonization theory. Faced with these conflicting opinions, later sages tried to make sense of the chaos. Rabbi Yehoshua ben Levi proposed this incredibly elegant, unifying hypothesis to map the opinions into a neat legal matrix. I mean, legal scholars naturally prefer harmony over chaos, right? So his theory was that these rabbis weren't just broadly disagreeing, they were reacting to specific incremental variations. In this theory, the majority, the rabbis, issue the strict baseline. Anything above the ring is invalid. Then Rabbi Yosi steps in with a specific leniency. It's valid, but only if at least a thread's breadth of the ring remains. And finally, Rabbi Yehoshua ben Levi argues, when a case violates even Rabbi Yosi's strict standard, when not even a thread remains, that is when Rabbi Chanina steps in with the ultimate leniency. It's a beautifully cascading staircase of legal rulings.
Which brings us to Section 3, a forensic textual anomaly.
Here is the problem. As rigorous textual logicians, the scholars of the Gemara can't just accept a neat legal matrix just because it organizes things beautifully. They have to test it against the raw evidence. So the absolute crucial question is, does the text actually support this alignment? Was Rabbi Chanina truly just aligning his leniency as the final step in a legal cascade? Or is the entire harmonization theory fundamentally flawed? And boom, here is our smoking gun. Just one single isolated word, testified. This verb literally shatters the entire harmonization theory. You see, the original Baraita introduces Rabbi Chanina's ruling merely with that one term. It doesn't say he agreed with a previous ruling. It doesn't say he added to Rabbi Yosi's condition. It just says he testified. In the Talmud, you guys know, every single word carries immense weight. The precise grammatical framing of this verb changes the whole trajectory of the law.
Let's unpack this in Section 4, the solitary witness.
We're going to execute the logical rebuttal here to see exactly how this fundamentally alters the landscape. The Gemara systematically dismantles the theory in 3 distinct steps. Step 1, analyze that exact verb choice, testified. Step 2, determine what the standard phrasing would normally be if a sage was actually building on someone else's case. And step 3, draw the inescapable logical conclusion based on the total absence of that connective phrasing. Think about it like this. If Rabbi Chanina was actually addressing Rabbi Yosi's specific strictness, if he was just part of that neat matrix, the text would have used very specific phrasing. It would have said, he testified about it. But that tiny pronoun? It's missing. The standard terms of agreement are totally absent. Therefore, using the word testified all on its own signifies a complete and utter break from the prior context.
He rejects the other rabbinic baselines entirely. He isn't modifying a previous opinion, he's bringing in a completely overriding paradigm, standing entirely alone in validating the slaughter.
Finally, we reach Section 5, the final verdict.
So with the harmonization theory entirely dismantled by one missing pronoun, let's look at the true legal landscape. We don't have a neat, interconnected cascade anymore. This revised matrix shows three fiercely independent silos of thought. The rabbis strictly invalidated across the board. Rabbi Yosi offers a highly conditional validation, but Rabbi Chanina ben Antigonus offers an independent absolute validation, totally regardless of anyone else's preconditions. The attempt to harmonize them was a really nice try, but the raw text just doesn't allow for it.
So out of these three competing silos, who wins? You might assume the majority sets the baseline, right? Usually a single outlier is just a historical footnote. But remarkably, it is this one solitary dissenting opinion that ultimately captures the truth of the law. The sheer force of Rabbi Chanina's singular, unattached testimony somehow overcomes the entire majority framework.
Rav Nachman actually cements this outcome later in the text. When he's pressed by other scholars, Rav Nachman ultimately aligns strictly with the pure, solitary leniency of Rabbi Chanina. It just goes to show that careful textual deduction, unearthing the stark reality behind a single word, and refusing to artificially harmonize disagreements, doesn't just correct some theoretical framework. It literally leads to the ultimate practice legal verdict. Real-world ritual law was decided because a brilliant scholar noticed a missing pronoun.
As we wrap up this explainer, I want you to think about the sheer power of precision we just witnessed. We literally just watched an elegant, dominant legal theory completely collapse, and a solitary dissenting voice become binding law, simply because an ancient text said testified instead of testified about it. It really begs a fascinating question. If a single missing pronoun can reshape reality like that, what other profound legal truths or massive paradigm shifts are currently hiding in the choice of a single word? Thanks for learning with me today. Keep asking the tough questions, and always, always look closely at the text.